everyone, my name is Mayu Suzuki and welcome back to Warwick International Development Society's Career Profiles. Just like in our last two episodes, we will be talking to Warwick alumni working across the development sector. Today, in our third episode, we are joined by an enthusiastic entrepreneur, David Izikowitz. David has completed his degree in accounting and finance at Warwick with an intercalated year in Hong Kong. During his year abroad, he co-founded MYEO, a social enterprise dedicated to youth development in Myanmar. Inspired by the field of GreenTech, he is currently pursuing a master's program in environmental engineering in Shanghai. Alongside his study, David founded Carbon Infinity in 2019 to develop a technological solution to the climate challenges in the 21st century. We will be sharing his knowledge, experience, and insights in the industry. Thank you for joining us today, David.
Thank you, Mai, for having me. That's a very kind welcome. I don't normally hear what I do, but it's nice to hear sometimes.
Thank you. So let's get started with our first question. So I guess we can start with what moved you to look into the opportunities of GreenTech?
So it was a friend in China. I was transitioning away from Myanmar, and he was starting a green asset exchange looking to enable farmers to better trade and utilize different products. So a farmer could loan a tractor to a village nearby and that kind of thing. So we were looking at that was going to be built on the blockchain, which was a popular technology at the time, pushed by the Chinese government. And so that kind of awoke me to the potential and the need for green and clean technology. And then sort of I read a lot more closely around the topic and settled on the fact that I didn't know enough, and also wouldn't be able to get a lot of credibility in the field with undergraduate in finance. And so that combination of potential in China and a lack of sort of fundamental knowledge led me to pursuing my master's, and that I guess is in the past, and now I'm looking to focus on direct air capture of CO2 from the air, which is the technology my company is working on as a climate change mitigation solution.
So yeah, you kind of half answered my second question, but so why so can you tell us about Carbon Infinity and like why you wanted to focus on direct air capture technology?
Yeah, so I mean, for like 6 months before I started my master's, I was contemplating sort of the direction I wanted to take my studies in, and where I wanted to go next. And so I read a lot around different solutions to climate change and sort of where we were in the world and what I could add value to. And so an emerging technology that I came across was direct air capture. And so that involves the development of machines to scrub carbon dioxide directly from the air. And that can be used either to create value-added products. So you can make synthetic jet fuel with the hydrolysis of the CO2 with hydrogen, or you can sequester underground as a negative emission technology. So it's sort of a dual purpose solution to both enable the decarbonization of highly polluting industries like aviation, shipping, and cement production, as well as offering the sort of negative emission solution, which we will need to get to widespread commercial scale if we are to limit warming to 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius. And so that's sort of the fundamental background between why I'm doing what I'm doing today.
Yeah, that sounds like really high in demand, because on the one side, there's like more shift towards like more cleaner, greener technology and ways of travel. On the other hand, we all know that we need to get rid of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So do you get like any support from the government at all, like a subsidy or?
So not yet. So we're our R&D research and development center is currently at our university lab in Shanghai.
Mm-hmm.
We've relied thus far on our research funds to get us to where we are. But I think by the end of 2021, we want to construct a pilot plant to test the efficacy of our technology, looking to deploy it by 2023. So
2023, that's quite soon.
yeah, so we want to move quickly with this.
Yeah,
and that's one of the advantages of working in a China context, is that they do things quickly and work very hard, and sort of gaps to production are quite low.
Okay. At the moment, I think direct air capture is more common or popular in the US, Canada, Europe. Is that correct?
So there's sort of three big names within direct air capture. So there's Climeworks in Switzerland, based in Switzerland. There's Carbon Engineering based in British Columbia, Canada. And there's Global Thermostat based in New York and Silicon Valley in the US. And so, yeah, so we're sort of the first commercial outfit, to my knowledge, in the Eastern Hemisphere.
Okay.
And so that is our prime market to begin with, until we get competitive kind of globally, and then want to become a global company and deploy facilities worldwide.
So you're planning to scale up massively after your pilot runs and...
Yeah, so the ambition is so there's sort of two approaches you can adopt when developing direct air capture. There's sort of the industrial facility scale facility, which can capture in the region of 1 million tons of CO2, which is sort of on the scale of an oil refinery, that kind of scale. And then you're looking at sort of more modular facilities, so the size of a shipping container. And those are the facilities that we'd like to develop on a mass scale. And so we want to make a factory kind of like a Tesla style production line, designed to bring the cost down significantly, which is the main inhibitor behind the mass deployment of this technology today, is the cost.
I see. Wow, that sounds very impressive, and I'm really looking forward to your progress. We have like one technical question from our audience. Is it better to use early technology to filter industrial exhaust air and only move on to atmospheric air capture after efficiency went up, or what's your plan?
So we need to do both, as a sort of short answer. When it comes to point source emissions, which is essentially the capture of CO2 from power stations and industrial facilities, we need to do both. And so the main inhibitor behind the point source capture is regulatory and sort of fiscal incentives. So in absence of a carbon price, there's really no incentive for companies to adopt that technology beyond that they think it's good for their brand or image. And then but a main issue within that is sort of carbon capture readiness. So in order to retrofit a carbon capture technology into a power plant, you need space and you need a certain design specification which is able to retrofit the technology, which for a lot of older facilities is not possible. And so there's an increasing drive for power plants or industrial facilities which are being built today to be carbon capture ready. And so there's that side of the equation. Within direct air capture, you're going to, for the foreseeable future, have emissions which are very difficult to capture at source. So you can't fit a carbon capture technology to an airplane to capture the carbon in the exhaust emissions. So you're going to have to capture it from the air. And so this is the sort of main reasoning behind our technology. But that said, we need to do both, and we also need to decarbonize those existing highly polluting sectors like cement production with newer technologies, potentially using CO2 as a feedstock, like what Carbon Cure is doing also in Canada, in sort of using CO2 in the calcination and cement hardening process to lock in CO2 in cement.
Okay. But it would be more circular if you could utilize the captured CO2 for like fuels, just as your company is trying to do, rather than locking it in.
Yeah, exactly. So ideally, storage is the best solution. We need to sequester CO2 and reduce the level of atmospheric CO2. That's sort of number one. The idea behind Carbon Infinity and kind of our logo and our name is in the recycling of CO2. So instead of taking fossil fuels out of the ground and bringing that CO2 from underground and into the atmosphere, our philosophy is to use what we already have in the air. So we have enough CO2 in the atmosphere, and to recycle that to be used as a feedstock for existing products that we need to use in our economy today. So kerosene is a great example of that. And so our first sort of goal is to make a sustainable jet fuel as close to carbon neutral as possible, using the hydrogen we can get from electrolysis. So we won't do that ourselves. We'll partner with a company who's focused on the electrolysis of water to make hydrogen. And we will focus on the CO2 capture side, and then use an established industrial process to make kerosene, which is a hydrocarbon fuel used to power jet airplanes. And so that's sort of the philosophy that we work with, is to both sequester CO2 from the atmosphere and use the CO2 in the atmosphere to make the products that we need to power our economies today.
So are the products really viable? Like, are they low cost enough so the jet companies want to use them?
Today, no, but the ambition is to bring the cost down. So, so right now the cost on paper is about double the per gallon cost of kerosene compared to the fossil fuel equivalent. But we predict that there will be a more stringent carbon pricing regime, as well as companies committing to a sort of net zero target. You're going to see a lot more interest and uptake in alternative aviation fuels, and we will be bringing our costs down with increased scale and technology development. So once there's more parity between a fossil fuel equivalent and a sort of air equivalent, then we'll see a mass adoption of these sorts of technologies. And that's across synthetic jet fuel or sort of aggregates in the form of cement, which are derived using atmospheric CO2 as well.
I'm starting to see the parallel with, for example, solar panels, because it used to be very expensive and inefficient, but over time it got more support and it just exploded because everyone was looking into it. So thinking about that, like, do you see like a lot of competition in your area?
Not yet, but we would like to see more. I think currently there's probably less than a dozen companies working on this technology in the world.
That's not that many.
We need dozens. The main barrier to that is sort of all of the companies which exist today have come out of universities. So carbon engineering came out of research from Harvard. Climeworks came out of research from ETH Zurich. Global Thermostat came from the former chief scientist at ExxonMobil. So you can think of that what you want to. But essentially, it's a very technology-driven process. And so the starting costs essentially are quite high in that you need a lab to prove your technology. And so it's not the same as building a software product or an app that you can sort of just prototype. Our first seed round will probably be in the region of £5 to £10 million. And most of that will go into a capital expenditure to build the actual facility. And so we need more money to come into this space to allow more companies to develop and to compete with ourselves and each other to drive costs down, because this will be a large industry in my opinion, and it does need some fiscal support from governments to get off the ground. But I think as time progresses, the development of a carbon economy will really blossom, and that I think will drive a lot more capital and more entrepreneurs into this space.
Do you get much investment from private sectors, non-governmental sectors?
So with our future seed round, the intention is to get money both from government and industrial partners. So our ambition is to make a carbon neutral jet fuel. And so we want to partner with companies which can help us achieve that goal, as well as governments which want to invest in this technology and develop a carbon economy domestically. So as sort of we're registered in the UK, I'm British, my business partner has over 10 years experience both working and studying in the UK. She is Chinese, and so we are a cross-border company, and we have had discussions with both the Chinese government and the British government, which are ongoing. So it sort of depends on where we are at the time and sort of what package best suits our strategy. Which will dictate who we get money from, and sort of where we locate our first pilot plant, and then where we look to build a factory sort of thing.
I see. So funding sounds like one of the challenges you are facing. Do you have any other challenges you faced, and how did you overcome them?
So COVID's been a bit of a challenge. I mean, so we started developing technology late last year. And so the timeline for our pilot plant has been pushed back, and thus the timeline for commercialization has then also been pushed back. And so our lab is somewhat back up and running, but it's obviously summer now, so people go on some holidays. And so money will be a challenge, but I think given the sort of specialist nature of our technology and giving our existing relationships with government stakeholders and industrial players, which we've developed from day one, funding will be challenging, but I think will be overcome relatively easily, especially given the focus on decarbonization and sort of net zero and our role in that. And then the main challenge will be in ramping up. So how quickly we can develop our technology from a pilot facility scale to a commercial facility scale, and then our go-to-market strategy off the back of that. So sort of, do we focus on building a plant for the production of jet fuel? Do we want to focus on capture of CO2 for sequestration? So the sort of carbon offset market, which is becoming a lot more popular, both with businesses like Microsoft and Google, and then consumers looking to offset their CO2. So there's a lot of a lot of different variables we need to consider, but it's looking good. I'm quietly confident that we can execute.
That's quite hopeful in this time of uncertainty. Yeah. Okay, slightly a different question. This is more personal question, but because you are still pursuing your master's, and then alongside you are running the company, how do you manage your time effectively to do both at the same time? What is your secret, I would say, to maintain a good work-life balance?
So my secret is not to keep a good work-life balance. I mean, it's yeah. So I've kind of been doing this since my undergraduate days at Warwick. So we started MYO in my year abroad at University of Hong Kong, and then came back to Warwick to finish my final year. Alongside my final year, I was running MYO from Warwick.
Yeah.
And London to an extent. And so, yes, my academics took something of a hit, maybe. I've never been that academically minded as it is. But I think it's a question of priorities. And so can you get away with, or are you satisfied with getting a 2-1 where you had the potential to get a first? Alongside the potential to grow a successful business. And so it's a question of trade-offs. And a lot of people say you can do 2 or 3 things while you're at university. You can sleep, study, and have a good time. And so my version of having a good time was working and building cool projects, and it is today. And so you can either do that and study, or you can do that and sleep, or you can study and sleep, but you can't do all 3 things. And so my sort of mental makeup is to work very hard, and sort of, I think now is a good time to work hard with the potential to sort of take my foot off the accelerator pedal in my 30s. Some people aren't that way inclined, and it's just a question of finding the right balance for you, even if it isn't that balance in other people's eyes, and just having the self-awareness to know what you're doing and making sure it's the best route for you. And so in keeping with sort of mental health, physical health, that I make sure I do work out sort of every day. And sort of go out for walks after lunch. And so I do maintain sort of a healthy work and fitness and sort of mental and physical health balance. But some aspects of life might take a hit, and you just have to be aware and sort of be comfortable with that.
But I guess for you, like working with your colleagues was like really having good time.
I love my work, and I wouldn't work 14 hours a day if I didn't enjoy what I did. And I think people need to find what that is that they love doing, and what they're willing to spend 14 to 16 hours a day doing.
That's almost all your waking hours, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's what it will take sometimes for a few years.
So it was during your undergraduate and also at the moment as well?
Yes, I mean, this morning I've been finishing writing a research paper that will be published by the end of this week, or not published, submitted to a journal to be published. And then next week I'll continue writing my thesis alongside the sort of work that I need to do to keep things moving.
Thank you for your time today.
It's a pleasure. I do enjoy doing these sorts of things, and sort of reaching out to other students. Is sort of the primary focus of my previous company was along these sorts of lines, to help young people achieve their goals and ambitions in life. And so it's what I enjoy doing as well.
So following on from what you just said, do you have any advice for young entrepreneurs?
Just start. Like a lot of companies today can be started with very little money, and very little sort of inherent expertise. You a lot of time, no one's born knowing things. The best education you can get is to learn how to learn. And so maybe Warwick's a good place for that, maybe it's not. But as long as you know how to learn things, that is the best foundational thing you can do. And so you have, if you're looking to develop a sort of software product or an app, the barriers to entry to that are next to zero. So you can develop a minimum viable product, an MVP, using Squarespace, Wix, Webflow, buy a domain on GoDaddy, or learn WordPress. It's very sort of simple and easy to use. You can develop a prototype app using, I think it's Pop or something. Develop a prototype chatbot. When it comes to sort of deep technology and sort of industrial technology, that is when barriers to entry are much higher. And so you need to think about whether you can get onto a fellowship or whether it's best to do a master's to get more involved in sort of the research and academic side of things. But my advice to entrepreneurs is just to start. Like the cost of failure, especially when we're this age, is next to zero. You have very little, you have no dependence on guessing, and sort of the opportunity cost is very low. You're an economics student, so the opportunity cost is next to zero. So the reason why not to do something is very low and next to zero. So I just deploy you to try. The worst thing you can do is not try.
I guess it's for many people, this first step is like the most scariest thing. Like how did you like take your first step, like when you first founded your company?
I think you just have to find ways to overcome that barrier to it's very easy to find excuses why not to do something.
Yeah.
You just need to overcome that hurdle. It's the same with a lot of things in life. You just need to write a list of pros and cons. Like, what are the pros of doing this? What are the cons of doing this? You'll find that the list of cons is very short, or you might have zero in the list of cons. And a lot of the time, it's very helpful to find a co-founder. I wouldn't advise people to start this journey by themselves. It's very lonely a lot of the time, and it's not good in a lot of aspects to do this by yourself. And so one of the best things you can do is to find a co-founder. A lot of the time that can be difficult, especially if you aren't a technical co-founder. It's very difficult to find that technical co-founder. But just surround yourself with like-minded people. I mean, within entrepreneurship at Warwick, there's a lot of societies. I was involved with Warwick Tech, and are still good friends with a lot of people from there. Warwick Entrepreneurs, obviously, Warwick Incubator. And so there's a lot of resources while you're at university, and I really encourage people to make use of those resources and those networks, which can be useful indefinitely. I mean, I'm 3 years out of Warwick, and I still stay in regular contact with a lot of people that I sort of met through these societies, and will be working with them in the future in some capacity.
Oh, so networking sounds very important, and keep the connection going.
Yeah, I think university is the best place to sort of find your passion. And so, because Warwick's a campus university, a lot of it happens within societies. A lot of things happen within societies. So you should spend a lot of your initial time there scoping and sort of trying out new things, and sort of finding your interests. and then second or third year really try and go deep into those sort of areas, whether it's to try and find your way onto Warwick Incubator's program. I don't know if they still exist.
It does, yeah.
Or sort of whether it's within WIDS to try and take up sort of an executive role, to bolster your CV and sort of to get more experience of what it's like to sort of manage a project. So societies are a decent sort of outlook into what it's like to run a company or a startup. Like, you need to manage people, you need to develop a strategy, you need to manage a budget, you need to look for sponsors, which is a good metaphor for selling to prospective clients. So a lot of the skills that you develop while at your university are very transferable to an entrepreneurship or to a career setting. And so don't waste the time and don't waste the opportunity, is what I'd say.
It's all for today. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you for your time as well. And if anyone wants to reach out, then feel free to leave my email in the sort of description. And I'll be happy to answer anyone's questions or to offer any more advice or insight.
You can find his email in the description section, and also more about the Carbon Infinity on their website, which is carboninfinity.com. And finally, a huge thanks to all our audience. If you found this episode interesting, please follow Warwick International Development Society's social media to keep updated on more content on international development, and of course, our next episode of Career Profiles. Thank you.